Learning SBF, an instructional presentation for learning the basics of SBF models. The purpose of this presentation is to teach you how to understand a new way of representing systems like the light bulb circuit shown here. The model is called SBF, which stands for Structure, Behavior, Function. In this presentation, you will learn what is an SBF model, how SBF models are arranged, and how to read an SBF model. The presentation will be taught in 5 lessons. The first lesson will be an overview and will cover the 3 basic models within SBF: structure, behavior, and function models. In the second lesson, we will teach you about structure models, in the third about function models, and in the fourth about behavior models. In the 5th lesson, we bring together all of the models using a biological example, a lotus leaf. Lesson 1, Introduction. The introduction will expose you to the range of concepts covered by SBF models. We will cover a lot of information quickly and then go into more depth in subsequent lessons. In this first lesson, we will learn about what an SBF model is and about the 3 kinds of models contained within it. We will highlight all of the parts that make up each model. We will review concepts of systems and subsystems, and then we will see some detailed examples of SBF models. So, what is an SBF model? Essentially, SBF models are a way of representing systems and how they work. When we say a system, what we mean is a collection of objects that work together to accomplish a particular function. SBF models capture the essential ingredients for explaining how a system accomplishes a particular function. There are many different things that are needed to explain how something works, so there are many different parts to an SBF model. An SBF model is comprised of 3 top-level models: a structure model, a behavior model, and a function model. Here we will list all of the components of each model. Don't worry about getting it all right now. We'll cover each in more detail throughout the lesson. The things we need to know for the structure model are properties, values, connections, and structural elements. Structural elements come in 2 types, either components or substances. The behavior model has states and transitions. Transitions come in a variety of types, as shown. The function model has 2 states, the beginning state and objective state, and an external stimulus. We can also note that functions are of 3 basic types: accomplishment, maintenance, and preventative. We'll talk much more about all of these models and their parts in subsequent sections. For now, we just want to get a feel for the kinds of things we'll be talking about. The notion of systems and subsystems are very important for SBF models, so it's important to understand a little about them now. As we mentioned, a system is a group of objects that together accomplish some function. A flashlight, for example, is comprised of a number of parts whose function is to create light. A flashlight also contains a battery and a light bulb. Thinking about these parts, we realize that each of them is comprised of a number of additional parts that accomplish their own functions. In other words, each of these flashlight parts is also a system. For instance, the battery stores chemicals that are used to create energy that is transmitted through connections on the battery. The battery is a subsystem of the flashlight system. An SBF model can model the top-level system, the flashlight, as well as each of these subsystems. We'll see how this is done in Lesson 3 and 4 and show an example of a model within subsystems in Lesson 5. SBF models are comprised of 3 models that are interrelated: structure models, behavior models, and function models. Let's take a look at each of them. Because behavior models build on both function and structure models, we're going to present them in order of structure first, then function, and behavior last. We'll go over each in much more depth in subsequent lessons. Structure models describe the relevant structural elements of a system, that is, physical components and substances in a system. Think of this as the what of a system. Structure models also consider the properties and values of the elements, which help describe important characteristics of physical components. Finally, structural connections describe the physical relationships between structural elements. This diagram represents a light bulb circuit with a switch. In it, we see the components of battery, switch, and light bulb. Furthermore, we see the substance electricity, which begins in the battery, and the substance light, which will eventually appear at the light bulb. As a convention in this presentation, all of the components will use dark blue boxes, and all of the substances will use light blue boxes. Connections are how the components, such as battery, switch, and light bulb, are attached. This diagram represents the physical system or structures of the light bulb circuit. Next, let's see what the structure model of the system looks like. Here is the structure model of the light bulb circuit. Notice that components are blue, substances are light blue, and connections are indicated by arrows with annotations. We can also describe some properties and values associated with each component, such as the location of the electricity, how many watts the light bulb takes and the voltage of the battery, and the mode property of the switch and its value off. We will always put properties and associated values in green boxes. We separate the property from its value using a colon. Here, in the case of the light bulb, the property is watt and the value is 50, separated by the colon in the green box. Chapter 2 will cover all of the aspects of structure models. Function models describe the intended use or purpose of a system. They do this by providing a detailed description of a system prior to the function executing, and then describing the conditions after the function has carried out its intended use. First, the function model must describe some beginning state of a system, which is the set of initial conditions of the system. Next, the function model describes the desired objective state of the system after the function occurs. Both the beginning and objective states are described in terms of the properties, values, and connections we saw in the structure model. Finally, function models describe one or more external stimuli which act on the system from outside of the system to help accomplish the function. Think of the function as why the system exists. The function of the light bulb circuit system is to create light, shown here in the orange box. We'll use orange boxes to describe functions. The function model describes the beginning state of the system, in this case where electricity is in the battery, the switch is open, and there is not light. The function model describes the external stimulus necessary to affect the change in states, in this case a force applied to the switch, and the objective state of the system, a state with light. Let's take a look at the actual function model for the system. Here we see how we represent the function model, which shows the beginning state, where the light has the property value of 0, the external stimulus force applied to the system, and the resulting objective state, where light has the property value of 30. Note, we use teal-colored clipped rectangles for states, and we put within a state those components and substances that are relevant, along with their properties and values in green boxes directly underneath the structural element. The external stimulus is in the purple box. Lumens, by the way, is a measure of the brightness or luminosity of a light. We will cover function models in Chapter 3. The behavior models describe step by step the mechanisms for how a system accomplishes its function. A behavior model starts with the beginning state from the function and shows all the intervening states between the beginning and the final objective state. You can think of the behavior model as telling a story about how the system works. To tell the story, the behavior model uses two things: states and transitions. Just like the beginning and objective states in the function model, a state in the behavior model is a description of a system in terms of properties, values, and connections of the structural elements of that system for a snapshot in time. Whereas states describe the system in a point in time, transitions tell us why the system moves from one state to another. Using states and transitions, the behavior model tells the story of how the function changes the system from the initial state to the objective state. Let's tell the story of how the light bulb circuit works, and then we'll see how a behavior model can be used to tell the same story. In the beginning state of the light bulb circuit, electricity is in the battery and the switch is off. There is no light yet, but we know the objective of the system is to create light, so we know that's how our story will end. In the next state, the electricity is pumped by the battery to the switch. Then an external force is applied to the switch, turning the switch on. Now that the switch is on, the electricity can flow to the light bulb. In the objective state, now that the electricity is present, the light bulb creates light. Now let's tell that same story using a behavior model. In state 1, electricity begins in the battery and there is no light. Note, LOC is an abbreviation for location. So, our initial state describes the location of the electricity as in the battery and describes the fact that there is no light. In the next state, the electricity has moved to the switch, so its location is now shown as in the switch. But why does this happen? All changes happen for some reason. Here we introduce a transition which explains why the electricity moved. In this case, it does because the function of the battery is to pump electricity. For transitions, we'll use these light blue clipped boxes within which we'll put relevant transitions. Next, something changes the switch mode to on. Again, this happens for some reason. The explanation, or transition, for this is because an external force is applied to the switch. In state 4, the electricity can now flow to the light bulb, because the switch is now on. In the fifth state, or objective state, we have light, which is created by the light bulb and because electricity is present. So, using a set of key states and the transitions between them, we can tell the story of how the light bulb circuit creates light. We'll go into more detail about this model in Chapter 4. To review, SBF models are of systems which consist of a set of objects which work together to accomplish some function, such as a light circuit, a heart, or the leaf of a plant. SBF models can model both a system and its subsystems. This is a very important concept for SBF models. In the simple case of the light circuit, we can model the whole circuit as well as, for instance, the battery subsystem. And using transitions, we will be able to show the relationships between them. We'll show how in Chapter 4. SBF models contain 3 different models. The first is the structure model, which describes the objects of the system. This is what a system is made of. It includes structural elements, which are either components or substances, and the connections among those elements. A structure model also describes the properties and values of those elements. The second is the function model, which describes the why of the system or its intended purpose. It includes a beginning state, an objective state, and any external stimuli. The third is the behavioral model, which describes how the system achieves its intended function. It describes this through in-between states and the transitions that explain how the system moves from one state to the next.